Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? It is a great honor to present our keynote speaker. Goli Ameri is an Iranian-American diplomat and businesswoman from the United States state of Oregon. She is the president and interim CEO of the Center for Global Engagement, which is a non-profit organization dedicated to fostering engagement between the United States and the rest of the world, with a view to promoting shared values and common interests and increasing mutual understanding and respect. She is the former Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Values and Diplomacy for the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. She is also the former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Educational and Cultural Affairs. Ms. Ameri ran for the U.S. House of Representatives as a Republican in 2004 and is a former delegate to the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Ameri.
Good morning. Is it still morning or is it afternoon? Thank you so much for that very kind introduction, and thank you all so much for being here today. It really is a great honor and pleasure to be here today to talk about this very, very important topic. You know, this morning, most of our panelists spoke about all the very, very relevant issues to the rise of entrepreneurship in terms of government regulations, financial reform, improved governance. I'd like to kind of take a look at it from a slightly different perspective as to what is America's role in promoting and the rise of entrepreneurship in the Middle East, and the importance of this role to U.S. public diplomacy, which can best be explained as finding effective ways of informing and engaging with foreign audiences, bringing Americans closer to foreign audiences. So, you know, entrepreneurship really represents what America is all about. It is deeply rooted in U.S. history. We all know that those people that first came to the United States in 1600s were innovative individuals that sacrificed what they knew, their traditional ways, and came here for new opportunities. We know that American school children, most of us who've had kids grow up in this country, you know, they are raised on staples of Thomas Edison and Ben Franklin and Henry Ford and all of these original entrepreneurs that were able to do so much for this country. And then, of course, you know, it's this very strong American belief that even for all the recent economic ills that Americans have had, they still have this deep belief that their fate is in their own hands. And that's really one of the qualities that makes this country so unique in so many ways. And you know, we all know that America plays a very vital role in promoting entrepreneurship all over the world. We know that people like Bill Gates and Mr. Skoll and all of these other very successful technology entrepreneurs, you know, now they're doing very, very important things in terms of economic development. They are very inspiring to people in other parts of the world. And then, of course, all the foreigners who've been educated at U.S. universities, they've done a phenomenal job of promoting the gospel of entrepreneurship overseas. And many of you probably know that actually 52% of the companies that are started in Silicon Valley are started by first-generation immigrants to this country. So entrepreneurship is really what America is all about. And it is also the key, as we all know, to job creation, poverty alleviation, middle class expansion, empowerment of civil society, and of course, ultimately stabilizing a society, a source for moderation, and transition to an enduring democratic order, all of which are really in the national interests of the United States. So why am I even saying that? Why is that important? And I think the best way to see this is through some numbers. I think as you see in this graph, this is a study, a poll that Gallup did on how some of the countries around the world view the United States. So I want you to look at basically Egypt. Egypt actually has one of the lowest numbers in the Middle East. That's the view of Egyptians about America. Not very high, especially as you compare it to the global average. We can say the same thing about Russia. You can see the very, very low numbers in Turkey, which is very surprising, considering the fact that Turkey is such a strong NATO ally. And then, of course, Pakistan. But then what's really interesting is when you look at some of these other numbers, and this is the way the world views the United States in terms of its technological and scientific capabilities. And all of these countries, for example, like Turkey, that have had such low numbers in terms of how they view the U.S. as an entity, they have a high opinion, comparatively speaking, of U.S. technological capabilities. I mean, look at all of these countries in the Middle East and North Africa. Some of these numbers are pretty high, even in comparison to some of the European countries. And then here is the way the American way of doing business is viewed in some of the countries that we're interested in today. And even you can see that with Turkey, we had this very low point in 2007, but that number obviously is improving, but not as high as we want it to be. So, we can see that in terms of promoting entrepreneurship and all of the positive effects that this will have for the United States. So, we spoke a lot also this morning, and I think we all know that in order to be able to build a strong entrepreneurship environment, there are some things that, as we all know, the panel this morning talked about are very important. The close relations between universities and industry, the role of government, the system of taxation, the system of regulation, all of these are very important in terms of how well entrepreneurship grows in a country. I want to talk about a couple of other very important attributes today. And I think there is a very interesting study that was done by Ernst & Young right before the G20 meeting in 2011. And basically, this was a study of 1,000 entrepreneurs in the G20 countries, and it highlighted the influence of the media and training as drivers of change when it comes to entrepreneurship. Let me repeat that one more time. All of these other things that we talk about, the role of government, taxation, regulation, the relationship between industry and universities, venture capital community, all of these are important. But when Ernst & Young did a study of 1,000 entrepreneurs in the G20 countries, the role of media and training were two of the most important things that stood out. And those are the two things that I want to talk to you about today. So 88% of these entrepreneurs see promotion of success stories and coaching programs as key essential tools in improving perceptions of entrepreneurship as a career option. And perception is important. When you look at polls, 42% of Europeans, and we're not talking about the Middle East now, 42% of Europeans are suspicious of business. And they're suspicious of entrepreneurs, and they feel that entrepreneurs exploit other people's work. And this is compared to only 26% of Americans. So perceptions are important. There is stigma associated with failure. In Germany, the top economic power of Europe, if you have had a business failure behind you, by law, you are not allowed to act as a CEO, to serve as a CEO. So, these perceptions are very important. How is failure perceived? I think that's an issue that Jeff Getman talked about this morning on the panel. Whereas in the US, the perception of being an entrepreneur, and I pulled this quote out of an article in The Economist because I thought it was just so representative of the mindset here in this country. A young person said, when I was in college, guys usually pretended they were in a band. That was the cool thing to do, to be part of a music band. Nowadays, people pretend to be part of a startup. That's the cool thing to do. So that's the mindset and the perception. And the influence of media is important. I have an example up here about USS Enterprise. How many of you watch Star Trek? Not many. But Star Trek, it always talks about going where no man has ever gone before. That's the mindset of young people in this country who are the largest viewers of Star Trek: The Next Generation on television or in movies. It's good to be a man who's gone somewhere but no other man has gone before. So the culture, and this is a question that Dariush asked our panel this morning, the culture of entrepreneurship is just as important, if not more important, than some of the factors that we've talked about in terms of the role of government. And that the same Ernst & Young study says that those countries that have understood this, like the US, like Canada, like India, like China, they are doing by far better in terms of entrepreneurship. In China, for example, there's a very, very popular show called Win that pits entrepreneurs against each other and has a huge viewership in China. Which brings me now to this Center for Global Engagement, which I'm heading, which I want to talk to you about a little bit. The Center for Global Engagement was born of the idea that we need to leverage the ingenuity of the private sector, of the American private sector, and American citizenry to foster engagement between the United States and people in other parts of the world with a view to promoting shared values and common interests. Entrepreneurship would be one of them, and creating mutual understanding and respect. And CGE does this through the two most effective mediums for engaging global audiences: internet, mobile technologies, and entertainment, and develops projects that really create a great transformational benefit to society at large. So CGE has two signature initiatives which I want to talk to you about, and this is all related to the impact of culture on our topic today of entrepreneurship. So one of our projects is the development of a socially relevant drama series that is very much inspired by the success of Turkish soap operas. How many of you have watched Turkish soap operas before? More people watch Turkish soap operas than Star Trek. That's fascinating. So I guess some of you who've watched it sort of understand the power of these dramas that are really very subtly changing cultural norms in the Middle East, but really also in 60 other countries around the world. And I think when we talk about global development, we also know that to really eliminate poverty, it's not just important to deal with just changing the material circumstances. It's also important to change mindsets and beliefs and attitudes that oftentimes have a hold on poverty. And we know that research studies have demonstrated that TV actually does change minds. So one of the things that CGE wants to do is use the power of television and through a compelling social drama have an impact. So I just want to take a few minutes to show you a video as to the impact that these dramas have had on exactly this topic of entrepreneurship. But before I show that to you, I want to show you this study that the Middle East Broadcasting Corporation did on one of the first soap operas that was broadcast there called Noor. And Noor was this girl who came from a poor background that gets married into this rich family in Istanbul. And she is an entrepreneur by nature. And she has a very supportive husband who supports her. And she ends up launching this very, very successful fashion design business. And she's the one that actually saves the family patriarch's 3-generation-old textile business at the end of the series. So you can see all the messages that people are hearing. Women's empowerment, gender equality, the promotion of the free enterprise system, how fabulous it is to be an entrepreneur. And NBC did a study that actually showed that a lot of women in the Middle East said that it contributed to raising awareness amongst young females to enter the work field in the hopes of building better societies and families. And they interviewed as well, people in the Palestinian territories, in the Gaza Strip, and there were a lot of young women there that were inspired by that. So let me just briefly show you what this is all about.
Dubbed into Arabic, Turkish television series have become a must-see throughout the Middle East. And according to the Turkish Economic and Social Studies Foundation, people from the Middle East are becoming increasingly more affected by Turkish culture. The research shows that 74% of people from the Middle East in 16 countries watch at least one Turkish-produced series, and most of them can name one or more Turkish actors. So what is it about these programs that have struck a chord with so many?
Vazgeçtim. Önce Kabristan'a uğrayalım. Sonra şirkete gidelim.
You can be Muslim and you can be modern. And they show that part of life that some of the Arabic people now are deprived of. Technology, nice living, modern life. Yes, it's very important. And they show the parts of life we don't have really in some of our countries.
It shows all the people that Muslim can have an open mind and open life, and they can have modern style.
Fatma.
With taboo-breaking scenes that include premarital sex, love triangles and nudity, Turkish TV series have been dubbed immoral by some religious authorities in the Middle East, and in some cases they've even been banned. But despite some opposition, Turkey has become a TV production powerhouse, and a wave of Turkish stars are given the red carpet treatment throughout the Middle East. The big boom came in 2006 when NBC, an Arabic language channel, bought the rights to the Turkish soap opera Forbidden Love. But even the show's producers couldn't believe their luck when the audience figures reached 85 million.
Right now we've sold approximately 50 series to more than 70 countries. At the beginning we used to sell each episode for $300 to $500. Sometimes we'd even pay them to buy the series, for promotional purposes. Now we have some productions that sell to the Middle East for more than $100,000. There's nothing to stop us becoming a so-called Bollywood. We have the potential.
Today, Turkish TV series have an export market of over $60 million that includes the Middle East and the Balkans.
Gamush debuted in 2005 and became the first Turkish soap opera to become a sensation across the Arab world. It centered around a young woman who grew up poor and married into a wealthy family. The final episode drew an estimated 85 million viewers, including more than half of the total number of adult women in the Arab world. That figure rivals the ratings of nearly every Super Bowl broadcast over the last 20 years. The show portrayed career-driven Muslim couples with men and women on equal levels.
Bir de erkek çocuğun olursa Hazreti Sultan sen olursun. Dünyayı sen yönetirsin.
Magnificent Century is the current rage in the region. It's a soap opera about Suleiman the Magnificent. The show focuses on Suleiman and his harem, his mistress turned queen, and includes his tolerance for members of other faiths. The show's artistry and production value are among the highest in Middle Eastern television. The Turkish actors and directors involved in the shows insist they are not intentionally putting political messages in their work. They say they are simply trying to create compelling programs that convey human drama. But whether it is intentional or not, Turkey's soap operas are creating new roles, new heroes, and new cultural norms for a rapidly changing region.
So I thought you'd get a kick of taking a look at this cartoon. Anyway, so moving along to the next item that came out of this Ernst & Young study, which said, the first one was the impact of media. So we clearly saw what the impact of media can be. But the second item that came up was the whole idea of the coaching and training. And I think this is something that Dr. Hassanein raised in the previous panel. So in this Ernst & Young study, it basically indicated that some of the countries in the G20 prefer some practical nuts and bolts training approach that actually shows would-be entrepreneurs how to take the leap from an idea to actually an enterprise. And other countries like to sort of teach entrepreneurship as a self-contained thing that really explains the benefits, the difficulties, and how it can contribute to the economy and job creation. So what we're working on is developing a global collaboration platform, which is called I Hear You, which can best be envisioned as an online Peace Corps, where, to begin with, Americans and members of the diaspora community, some of these organizations, for example, that our previous panelists were talking about, bringing them on this platform and having them volunteer their skills and services pro bono to their counterparts in some of the countries in the Middle East that we're talking about today. And the first two channels of collaboration that we're focused on is the promotion of entrepreneurship and teaching English, because as we all know, these are the two most dynamic economic empowerment tools. And I know that somebody probably has mentioned this statistic today, but we know that the Arab world needs to create 75 million new jobs by 2020, a jump of over 40% over 2011, just to keep employment levels at the current levels, and not to have even more massive unemployment. And Turkey, which actually has a tidal wave of about 12 million young people coming on the, about to enter the labor market, unfortunately, with all of the successes that it's had in the last decade, still ranks 143 out of 183 countries in the World Bank's Ease of Doing Business study. So, these are areas that could really take advantage of this idea of mentorship, which Dr. Hassanein brought up in the last panel. And once again, I want to show you this very short panel of what this idea of this platform looks like. So you have volunteers, American volunteers or members of the diaspora community that volunteer some of their time per month, let's say 12 hours per month, because that's the average time that people are willing to volunteer their time. And they basically share their entrepreneurial skills either through collaboration on business plans or on actually taking young people through an education course, all on a volunteer basis and all at no cost. So I Hear You basically takes advantage of the latest in real-time communications technologies and crowdsourcing technologies to actually make this happen.
My name is John Rhodes. Thanks for joining us this afternoon. Today we're going to have a topic about entrepreneurship. I've been involved in starting companies for about 40 years. So maybe we could just quickly go through and let everybody know where we're from. Azam, can we start with you?
Turkey.
Sergey?
Russia.
Tamer?
Pakistan.
Wayne?
China.
Zainab?
Egypt.
What do you think is needed to start your own business? We'll start with Azam.
Funding.
Sergey?
A new product.
I'd like you to think about today what I'd consider the 5 most important things that you need to start a business. Zainab, what do you think I mean by improving something that already exists?
Oftentimes would-be entrepreneurs think they have to come up with a brand new idea, whereas most often it's not the newness of the idea that matters, but how we can improve on an idea that already exists.
Tamer, how do we find something, a product or a service or a gadget that people need?
Sometimes the best thing to do is to look around us. My uncle, for example, sells mango juice from a kiosk in Pakistan.
I want you all to write down 2 things that you're really good at. Wade, what would you say your primary strengths are?
Logic and networking.
And Zainab, last time we talked, you told me that you're a little hesitant to take risk.
I just associate taking risks with gambling, and the thought of being put in a position where you could lose a lot in a short amount of time is scary.
Now I'd like to share a little video with you. This is a good idea about how to deal with risk-taking.
A teacher told him he was too stupid to learn anything, and he should go into a field where he might succeed by virtue of his pleasant personality. Fired from a newspaper because he lacked imagination and had no original ideas. If you've never failed, you've never lived.
And all the people that you see around you that are successful, it's their ability to find a solution for a particular problem, solve it better than others, and the drive and the passion to see it through to success. Now the question is, where do you find funding? And the answer is to focus first on your friends and family network. The first time you approach an institution like perhaps a bank for initial capital, they will ask you right away how much of your own money you've invested in the business and how much you've been able to raise from others. They'll want to know whether other people believe in you before they'll believe in you.
Where else can I find funding aside from friends and family?
Depending on how much development there is in your country, there are different types of funds that really help seed startup capital. Kiva or other partners would be a good source. Does anyone have any final questions about our short discussion today?
What are the pros of working in a partnership as opposed to working alone?
One of the big pros of having partners is that you'll make better decisions. 2 heads are better than 1. Well, this has been a very interesting session for me. Great questions. Again, my name is John Rhodes. I hope you learned a lot today, and I look forward to seeing you during our next session.
So that's the end of my presentation. I just want to take a moment to thank Dariush and your team really for setting up this wonderful event and for the invitation. Really appreciate it very much.
Anyone have a couple of questions? We got a bit of time for Goli. Questions? They're doing me a favor and trying to get
I must
get
have done
my
a
show
great
on
job
the-
in explaining
You've done an
everything.
exceptional job. Last chance. Okay, there we go. See, they were just shy. Okay. We want you to ask the question. Let me go here and then go right back there.
I'm just, where do you get your funding for CGE?
Great question. I'm going to come and talk to you afterwards. Actually, for foundations, corporations, high net worth individuals, and we have a sort of a business model that includes both philanthropic contributions as well as, especially with I Hear You, as well as corporate branded channels and advertising. And with the drama series, we are raising the initial development funds as a nonprofit so we can have control over the content. But then there will be a for-profit production arm that can partner with the entities in Turkey and the Middle East Broadcasting Corporation and some international distributors.
Thank you. This was really good. I have a question about the diaspora. I mean, there is obviously a Turkish diaspora here as well as other ethnicities that are in the U.S. What is, how do you engage them here, not just for resources, but also for, their, if you will, intellectual contribution, their networks, and some of that is obviously here under this roof today as well.
Right. And once again, that's also a very good question. So we've engaged with two diaspora organizations. Right now we're in discussions with them. One of them is open. Once again, I heard Dr. Hassanein refer to them, as well as Thai. And these are both organizations that have Pakistani American members, because one of the countries we're focused on, obviously, is Pakistan. We are working with Endeavor in Turkey. We're also in discussions with them because Endeavor is a global organization that promotes entrepreneurship. We are working with their Turkish entity, and we are very open in learning more about diaspora organizations here in the US, because our first step is to bring these organizations on this platform. And then, just like with any other platform, if you do a good enough job, then it will grow virally. But as a first step, our partners are organizations. We're in discussions, for example, with SCORE, with the Young Presidents Organization. These are not diaspora entrepreneurship related organizations, but they're American, whose membership is interested in actually volunteering this skill on the platform. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. In fact, I really would like to invite any one of you that belongs to an organization like this to please come and talk to me afterwards. It would be really great to discuss collaboration.
I have another question as well. There's a wealth of knowledge and research that goes on in the Middle East in connection with university research. What do you propose with respect to tech transfer models that would balance innovation as well as balancing between national and private interests, so that a lot of the innovations also go back to the university and the national system?
So I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part of your question?
Sure. What are some of the tech transfer models that you would see useful in the Middle East, so that there is a balance between innovation and national and private interests as innovations take, to the market?
I think that level of technicality, I really need to allow some of our other more technical colleagues here, especially like, for example, the gentleman from Microsoft who probably does this for a living to answer, because their answer will be by far more useful. Our focus really is not, this is what we've learned through our research. Oftentimes, focus on entrepreneurs in the Middle Eastern or other regions is on impact entrepreneurs, because these are the people that have the highest chance of success, and they have the highest chance of actually creating an idea developing an idea into an enterprise and creating jobs. Our focus actually is not necessarily on impact entrepreneurs. Our focus is on the next 2 levels down. We are going after vocational schools, vocational track, just anyone and everyone, opportunity entrepreneurs, but also entrepreneurs that are forced to become entrepreneurs, so that we can help them go to the next level. And just to give you an example, Endeavor, as a global organization, particularly in Turkey, they have to go through 1,000 applications before they select their 100 impact entrepreneurs from Turkey alone. We want to be dealing with those 900 that are left over. And those are impact entrepreneurs as well. But those are the kind of people that don't make it into these very, very competitive programs like Endeavor or MIT Enterprise Forum, or great organizations like that really end up making a difference in terms of job creation. I hope that answers your question.